I've always been close to my sister, so imagine when I'm driving down the road one day minding my own business, and I get a phone call from my sister, who just tells me that my brother-in-law, Richard, has assaulted my sister, slapped her right across the face. Well, I go ahead, type in the GPS real quick to see the exact fastest route to get there because I'm going to give Richard a piece of my mind. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I did when I get there. But you guys might want to stick around for update number 2, because there's one heck of a twist. I'm 32 and my name's Jack. I've been suffering from betrayal by my blood and kin. Ever since I was young, my family's built trust, love, and unity, so whatever happened among us, no matter what we did wrong, we would always talk to each other and just resolve it. We would not listen to any third person who talks smack about any family member, so the shock and betrayal would break even a military veteran like me. No enemy of mine should go through the vicious experience of your heart shattering into pieces as your family loses the trust that you've built for years. I'm writing this story because I'm frustrated with everything going on, and I just need to get to the bottom of this. All I'm trying to do is navigate and find out why my parents hate me. My sister would not even talk to me, and my brother-in-law has filed charges against me. But before that, let me tell you the story from the beginning and how I ended up in jail. It's a long story, so bear with me. We've always been a loving family with just so much trust and unity amongst us. Whenever people or any outsiders tried to break our bond, it only got stronger. Even when Emily and I moved from my parents' house to build our careers, we always kept in touch. I went away from military duty at 21, while my sister moved out as she was starting college. Emily and we always shared our problems no matter where we were. When she was born, I saw my baby sister and promised myself that I would protect her no matter what. I promised that I would not ever doubt my sister about anything and blindly trusted her thousands of times right from our childhood. We used to go to the same school, and I would find her crying alone on the ground when no one would ever try to console her. I used to ask her what happened, and she would tell me that a few guys from her class would not stop calling her names. A boy even tried to hit her, but ran away when a teacher came around. Well, I was in a fit of rage, and that's when I punched all the bullies for her. I would fight them with whenever they would trouble her, and that would stop them for just a few days. Our bond was stronger than ever, and just me fighting the bullies made my sister smile as she knew she had someone with her. Soon the bullying stopped. We grew up, and I had just finished college. I was preparing to join officer candidate school to join military service, and Emily was just moving out for her college. Everything was turning out to be pretty great, and I joined the military soon. Emily graduated along with her boyfriend Richard, and they both were doing pretty well in their respective careers. They've been together ever since they were inseparable, because they wanted to focus on their career. They married each other only last year. Since they have been together, they would, work out things, but also had fights and would argue with each other quite a bit. But in the end, they would always resolve things and would never leave it at that. So, when they got married last year, we all knew that they would figure out and just resolve whatever issues they went through, and what I did not expect was to hear from my sister that Richard was kicking her out over a fight and that he even hit her. That time I blindly believed my sister and never heard what Richard had to say. This would later come back to bite me on the butt, but that's a story for the next time. Richard was a good man. He knew what he wanted in life and went on to pursue that, and he was protective of Emily. But he did not let his protectiveness hinder her from achieving things in her career. He would always make sure that Emily's happy with every decision he takes and vice versa. Ever since they were in a relationship, he and I have been the best of buddies and always talked about family bond and work. So it was quite a shocker to find out that Richard, we knew, would do something like that to his true love and would treat her like that. At that time, I did not know what was going to be revealed to me so soon, so I trusted my sister. It was summer this year when I had just reached home because I was off duty now. I was waiting to surprise my family the next day, and I could not wait to surprise them. It had been a while since I met them, as the last time I saw them was the previous year. I used to call them whenever I could, but that made me miss them even more. But the day I got a call from my sister Emily, I greeted her with a cheerful voice, as I did not expect to hear sobbing resonating through the cell phone. She explained that she could not stay with Richard anymore, and I was shocked as she walked me through everything that was happening to her. It was unbelievable to imagine that Emily and Richard, the college sweethearts, one of the most loving couples around me, fought in a way that was detrimental to their relationship. And they did not want to stay together anymore. So, I asked Emily to calm down and tell me everything that happened, and I could not even imagine the sight of my sister being miserable, crying for someone who would not even be a match for what a beautiful person she is. She was still crying over the man she thought would treat her right, but I consoled her through the phone. Already reaching my car, so many thoughts were running in my mind, but I had to keep my cool just to understand why Emily was crying. She elaborated on how a furious Richard hit her when they were fighting and threatened to kick her out if she did not leave right now. That was it. It pushed my buttons and I stepped on my accelerator and drove to their house. I mean, how could he? How could Richard lay his hands on my sister? My loving, kind sister who had not even hurt anyone. I could not think anymore. All I knew was that I had to meet Richard and bring my sister away from him. When I reached my sister's house, I was just blinded by rage. I did not realize what I was doing, but all I knew was that I had reached my destination, and I drove my car and screeched at the entrance not before breaking the mailbox as I hit it with my car. I began thrashing items at their home without giving them a chance to question me. I saw her crying with tears running down her cheeks, and her hair was a mess and her eyes swollen where Richard had hit her. She was miserable. Was Richard hitting her? I don't remember what exactly happened, but I pushed Richard on the ground and punched him in the face as many times as I could count. I hit his gut a couple times too, as my sister tried to stop me from doing so. The house was a mess, and I had punched him as he lays there unconscious, unable to take my punches anymore. Nobody treats my sister that way, man, and nobody lays a hand on her, whatever happens. Because I knew she would never do wrong, and there must be a misunderstanding. Somebody stopped me from throwing punches at that time. I don't really remember. But I calmed down and then stared at my sister, who was still sobbing silently. I called an ambulance for him, but did not bother to look back at him and took my sister with me. I took my sister to my house, where she explained further how Richard was treating her differently after marriage and how he had changed drastically once they were back from their honeymoon. The first month felt like a dream, a paradise, but soon his true colors began to show. Throughout the night, my poor sister could not sleep a wink as she sobbed in my arms while I tried to console her my best. A day later, deciding that it would, be a change of place for her, I bring my sister to my parents' house, but a new shock awaits me as they bash me for doing so. They were upset and hostile towards me for not thinking through and punching Richard. My sister insisted that she was hit by him, and that's why I had to step in, but my family stubbornly stuck to the fact that I should have never hit Richard. They sided with him, saying that he would never do such a thing, and they would agree with Emily and me only once they knew about the whole situation at hand. Well, I defended myself that I could not stand by as he hurt my sister, but they would not even let me explain my side of the story, and were soon to judge me and my behavior towards Richard. My parents revealed that Richard is filing for divorce and plans to press assault charges against me. And even now, they side with Richard. They told me that I had crossed the boundaries and without thinking had ruined my sister's life. I was furious. Whatever happened to our family, our trust, our bond? We always tried to resolve things, even if things got a little out of control, and I had enough. I had to, quote, talk to Richard again. How could he even do this without even talking with my sister? He did not even give each other a chance to explain. Emily was crying again, but at least this time my mother hugged and consoled her. I lied to my parents, saying that I would go and apologize when in fact I had other plans. I called a few of my friends and headed to Richard's home. What I did not know back then was that it was all a trap. I was frustrated and felt betrayed by my own family. I mean, how could they side with Richard, who was hitting their daughter as she was crying? How could they even trust a man who treats their daughter like this? I was flabbergasted. They always thought of us out just before hearing each other out of something. But this time, they did not even give me a chance to explain, you know. My friends and I reached Richard's house to confront him, and I wanted to ask why he did what he did, why he was treating my sister this way, and what happened to the love that would talk about all the time. Why he was so insistent on filing for divorce, and why he was pressing charges against me. Well, soon I realized it was a trap that got me arrested. When I reached his home, I was all set to confront him and literally punch him again if he would not listen, but it's a big mistake. I should have tried to talk with him decently, because as soon as I stepped in, my friends and I were arrested. I don't regret what I did, but I didn't want my friends to get arrested as well along with me. They took us to the station and locked us up in jail, and we spent a night there, and they soon released my friends because of the lack of charges against them. However, I was not so lucky, as I was involved in assaulting Richard. It was dreadful living in the cell because of the mistake that I've done, but I have never regretted doing it because all I did was protect my sister from harm and threats. But soon I'm filled with regret when my family reveals to me that Emily was cheating on her husband, and when Richard confronted Emily about this, she began to throw things at him in anger. She was furious that she was caught, and now she had no way to defend herself. To protect himself, Richard had thrown a vase at her which barely hit her eye. I was feeling so many emotions at once: shock, betrayal, regret. Shocked because I could not believe my sister would do something so terrible. Betrayal because I could not understand why Emily would lie to me, and regret, it's because I only listened to one side of the story. I soon realized what I had done, and in the process ruined my relationship with my family and also my life. Suddenly, everything began to feel insignificant, and this one little mistake that I made seemed bigger than whatever I did in my life. I had to spend day and night in prison without proper meals, and was treated like trash without basic human respect. Even though I was a military veteran, I had to go through everything. I agreed that I made a mistake by reacting to a half-truth, so I accepted my punishment and 6 months in jail. We go through rigorous training in the military, hard enough to make anyone strong to face any situation or hurdles in life. But I would never want to spend another night in prison, in an enclosed space where you have no space to move or do anything freely. I would not say I suffered terribly, but an innocent civilian would not bear to survive here. I was finally released after 6 months, and I was relieved that I did not have to serve my time anymore. Everything was finally over. But I had so many things to do. I had to clear things up with my family, talk to Emily and ask why she did what she did, and apologize to Richard for misbehaving and punching him without listening to his side. To my shock, my family would not talk to me. They were actually hostile, unwelcoming of me, even though they saw me after so many months, and I never even got a chance to talk to them about everything these past few months. They just didn't want anything to do with me. And all I wanted was to explain things from my side, but I knew I did wrong by hitting Richard, so I accepted my fate. Emily would not pick up my phone calls, nor would any of her friends, and I know she's scared. She doesn't talk to me when I'm angry, but more than angry, I was hurt. How could my sister betray me like this? How could she cheat on her husband and lie about it using her tears? Was she always like this? Was she the same precious little girl whom I wanted to protect from the world? I was temporarily discharged from the military as they got to know about my case. They were still investigating what actions to take and how to proceed with my case. I, as a military veteran and my 12 years of service, have never gotten charges against me for misbehavior, and this was the first time. So right now, I'm waiting for the next set of action. But before that, I had to apologize to Richard, so I called him the other day. He didn't pick up the phone, and I had to speak to him through my lawyer. However, that would not really come quickly. It would take a lot of time. And I needed to know things now. I called him on my friend's phone, and he was going to end the call, but I stopped him and I apologized. I explained how my sister lied to me, saying that he hit her, and I just reacted out of rage. I asked him to give me one chance to explain myself and that he could bring someone if I still felt like a threat to him. He agreed to meet at a nearby restaurant, and he also told me he would explain everything. Right now, I'm riding at the restaurant waiting for Richard to explain what exactly happened. I still hope that Emily cheated on him was all just a misunderstanding. I'm so frustrated right now because nobody would tell me what exactly went down. And the best thing I can do right now is ask Richard himself, as Emily was nowhere to be found. Because of all these feelings within me, I have had a hard time understanding them, but I feel slightly better after writing this here. Update number 1. You can actually heal. Straight from betrayal. It's coming from outside, there's a possibility, but what if it's your blood that's betraying you? How do you recover from that? And when Richard told me everything that happened, I was actually in shock. Being shocked would be an understatement. I did not recognize the Emily that he was talking about. Was she the same naive Emily who was too scared of the world? Well, the girl who shared love and kindness with everyone. How did things even come to this? When I met Richard that day, I half expected that he would not come, but he did. He wanted to let me know the entire truth, and I was thankful for that. Because my family disowns me, my sister would not talk to me, and no one would tell me exactly what happened. I first apologized to Richard for reacting the way that I did, and I expressed my deep embarrassment for my reaction. I asked him if there was any way I could redeem myself in his eyes, and Richard did not have anything against me. We never really had any disagreements before this. We were friends. But somehow when it came to Emily, I lost my cool and assaulted him. This was my lesson to always know the full truth before reacting to anything, even when it comes to your family and blood. It did not take much time for Richard to forgive me. He also had the misconception that I knew everything and reacted that way. He was threatened by Emily, saying that she would not let this go and make his life terrible, well, along with her brother. He explained that soon after their marriage and their honeymoon, they spent their first month as a happily married couple. But Emily's behavior changed when she came home after her business trip. She stopped spending time with him. She would not listen to most of the things that he said, as she was barely present in the most important moments of his life. Once, he won an award for a project he was working on. Even though Emily attended the event along with him, she was not present to cheer him on. He observed these little signs, but he thought that she must be tense because of work. I realized the things that Emily had explained to me were simply all a lie. It was her that had changed after the marriage. Soon, he had to find out about her cheating in a very embarrassing way. Emily went on another one of her, quote, business trips when she was caught kissing another man in a hotel by Richard's friend. Emily pretended to not know him back then, but when she returned home from the trip and had to face her husband, she denied ever going to the hotel. He did not want to accuse her without any solid proof, so he just left it at that. Richard trusted Emily. He assumed that his friend might have gotten somebody mixed up and there must be a misunderstanding, but when Richard inquired if there was any registration in her name at the hotel, his suspicion turned out to be true. His friend somehow got his hands on the CCTV footage from the hotel security, and they caught her on camera. When he confronted Emily again, she began to grow furious and started throwing things at him, and he said he never even seen Emily like this. It was the first time he was seeing her so furious and so out of character. So, as soon as she began targeting him to hit her husband somehow, Richard defended himself by throwing the first thing that was beside him to save. Well, and soon he did not realize that Emily would call me. He thought of explaining things to me when I got there, and he knew that I would listen to him no matter what happened, but I did the opposite. I shamefully stared down at the coffee that we ordered while we sat at the restaurant. there was a bit of unsettlingness, and what a big mistake I've made. Update number 2. After everything was revealed to me, I knew I had to take my chance and track down my sister. Wherever she was, and with whatever intention she was doing this, I had to understand why she did it all, but so far we had no clues where she was. She was successfully hiding herself because none of her friends knew her whereabouts. When I asked Richard if he knew who Emily was cheating with so that we could go get some clues about her location, he said that he had no idea who it was, because he was not a colleague from the office or anyone else of his old friends. My friends and I checked with her office to check if she was there, but Emily apparently resigned 6 months ago and no longer worked there. They didn't know what or where she was headed next, as she just mentioned that she wanted to live with her parents for a while, because of all this stuff that was happening in her life. She told the situation to her office, so they excused her, thinking it must be hard going through something like this. After failing to know her whereabouts, I realized that I had not talked to my parents after the incident again. Even if I tried to, they would not let me because I behaved so rashly that they thought it was better to disown them. Or was there more to it? Were they hiding something from me too? I want to laugh and cry at this situation because the ones whom I've trusted and loved so much were the ones I questioned if they were right or wrong. I can't help but reminisce about the old times. I did not even know if my family would talk to me anymore. I reached there and apologized for my behavior and the embarrassment that they had to face because of me. I explained that I had no idea that Emily was cheating on Richard until they explained it to him. And now that I talked to Richard, everything was crystal clear. All I wanted to do was get a hold of Emily and understand why she was doing this, and why she trapped me and ruined my life. They were sympathetic towards me as I explained everything, and they revealed that they were tired of Emily's antics, and she has changed so much from that sweet girl we knew. My parents also did not know what happened, but all they knew was that she was acting very different. Richard had called them last year in June when he was trying to make sense of everything. My parents, who were hostile to me, turned warm. They apologized to me for not understanding me, but still stood strong on how I should not have reacted so suddenly and chose violence as an answer. I accepted that. But my family and I were back on good terms, and we met each other on the weekends as I was waiting to be called to duty. I was suspended for 6 more months as the military ruled out that I had any malicious intent towards a civilian, and all I did was try to protect my family, so that was the only punishment I received from the military. Richard had filed for divorce by now. He stated how he no longer knew who Emily was, and all he wanted was to live peacefully now. His heart broke, to go through the entire process because it was his lifelong lover. The only girl he loved so much. I sympathized with him and supported him throughout the process. This was my way of repenting for what I did to him. While all this was happening, Emily suddenly showed up at my house one day. The next thing I know, I find myself at the police station again. Update number 3. I left some loose ends in my previous update, so please give me a chance to explain. It was true that I found myself at the police station again, but I was not arrested. I'm writing this from my car outside a restaurant while my friend went inside to buy me some food. When Emily showed up this morning so unexpectedly, I was taken aback, because I knew she would come one day. But I did not realize she would appear in front of me so soon. I'd even given up on trying to find her whereabouts, but here she was, standing with a furious look on her face, and I asked her what she was doing here. Because at the moment I did not want to talk to her. Even though I've been looking for her all this time, I didn't know how to ask her everything. Because I, for one, was more than ashamed to even breathe the same air as her. Emily, with a furious look on her face, asked me why I sided with Richard for the divorce. She said I should have sided with her instead, and I told her that I knew who was in the wrong now, and that she could not manipulate me into believing any more of her lies. Emily looked at me in shock as if she expected me to side with her even in her wrongdoings, and She desperately asked me to forgive her for everything that she wanted. Well, she needs my help. She loved another man, but she did not want to leave Richard yet because he earned a lot of money. It would only be a few more months until her lover found a job so they could live with each other happily. I stared at her with absolute disgust. I could not believe that it was my sweet little sister who was saying this. Emily was crying, but this time there was a desperation written all across her face. The desperation to live with another man whom she met only a few months ago. The desperation to get out of a marriage with the man she loved for so many years. I just shook my head, pure disappointment at her, and told her that I could not help her in any way. And now she's all alone. In fact, I told her that I would support her in everything even now, but I won't side with her wrongdoings. She furiously went away from there, driving her car away with the tires screeching, and after a few hours, in the evening, I get a call from Richard asking me to help him out as Emily had pressed charges against him that he physically abused her and filed domestic violence charges against him. So that's how I found myself in a police station, along with a lawyer friend who bailed Richard out, and Emily was nowhere to be seen, but Richard was relieved as his phone was lost and I was the only contact that he could remember. So he was thankful to me for helping out. I told him that it's the least I could do, and I realized that she was no longer the sister that I knew years ago. I would always be there for her when she was in trouble. I would stay away from her now, though. I'm still weary of my sister and her words and actions that have almost ruined my entire life. Update number 4. From all the chaos that's happening around, I did not expect everything to turn out well. Even though it was difficult staying away from my service, time flew by as I was soon called to duty. I'd faced some trouble with my superiors over my misbehavior last year, but I was exhilarated with joining back. I was fortunate enough that even though I hit Richard terribly, he survived and decided to not press charges, or else I would have to face severe punishment both by law and military. This was also the time when Richard and I had turned out to be great pals. We still keep in touch whenever possible, and after he divorced Emily, it took him some time to get over the fact that his longtime love could do something like this to him. He was now happily single and was not looking for a relationship anymore. He was doing very well with his new promotion at the moment, you know. My parents, who were happy that I was finally back on duty, also kept in touch with me. They were no longer angry at me and loved me just the way they loved me when I was young. They knew that I did, well, something wrong, but they also know that I now realize how much I regret doing what I did. I'm glad that I had a chance to explain myself and resolve any issues with my family. But yet, I'm not on speaking terms with Emily, and she did try to reach out to me through a letter, stating she regrets her decision and wants me to forgive her if possible, and she is doing better now. Although Emily said in her letter that she was doing well, I knew that she wasn't, because my parents were not on speaking terms with her. She was out of work recently and her friends were avoiding her completely and she was all alone. But this was her chance to redeem herself. This was her way to grow as a person and be the sweet Emily that everybody knows. So, whenever you find yourself in a tricky situation like me, always make sure you know the complete truth and only react civilly without resorting to violence, even if you are a military veteran. Listen to both sides of an argument or a fight before judging and doing something wrong, else you'll have to face severe consequences like I did.
Well, it turns out that OP might have overreacted a bit, since, he kinda got sent to jail and beat someone to a pulp who really didn't do anything, according to the people in the story, since Emily turned out to be a liar who was cheating and she was destructing the house by throwing things everywhere. I would like to hear from you guys, though. What exactly did you make of this story? And if you were in OP's position, how would you have changed it, or would you have done the same thing if that was your sister and you thought that she just got hit? I would love to hear from you. This was a very sticky situation. It wasn't like the normal stories that we read on the channel. But if you liked it, there's plenty more to come. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.